recent tremendous advances in the technological investigation of space, and supercomputers interpreting the data returned by orbiting instruments, science has had to come to terms with the realization that the universe should contain 9 times as much material than has been detected thus far. They have coined the phrase dark matter to account for this missing substance. The ancient wisdom, however, has always taught the existence of non-physical regions and energies that interpenetrate the universe. Astrology is an ancient science that enables us to interpret the influence on man of the energies that emanate from these hidden regions. These forces permeate the entire universe, cosmic energies like the 7 rays, and they influence all life. They reach us on the earth via the constellations and are channeled through the sun into our own solar system, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Strongly felt within the solar system are the influence of the 12 zodiacal signs and of course the planets that make up its physical structure. Astrology is geocentric. In other words, it places the Earth at the center, a fixed point around which the heavens rotate. Each of us on the Earth is also at the center of our own universe, uniquely reacting to the energies that surround us, both terrestrial and cosmic, exoteric and esoteric. Astrology provides the mechanism for understanding these influences as they affect each individual. A central maxim of astrology is, as above, so below. The microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm. By studying man, we can study the universe. Or, as Paracelsus, the great 16th century alchemist and physician, put it,
man is a star, no less than any star in the heavens. When man eats his bread, he eats the stars. Man is a sun and moon, a heaven filled with stars. He is a solar system in miniature.
Let us now orientate ourselves astrologically by placing man on the horizon, standing encircled within the center of his world. To the left is the east, the ascendant, to the right the west, the descendant. A line drawn between these 2 points is the first division of the horoscope. Directly above his head is the medium coli, or mid-heaven, north, the highest point of attainment. Directly below is the imum coli, or nadir, the lowest point, south, and this is the second division of the horoscope. This disc is further divided into a total of 12 segments called the houses, which are numbered sequentially from the segment below the eastern horizon. The spokes of the wheel are called cusps. Moving anti-clockwise around the circle, the proximal cusps antecede the houses and are a major influence on that segment of the horoscope. So the proximal cusp of the first house, for example, marks the eastern horizon. This is the ascendant, the most important part of the horoscope, as we shall see later, and is the place where the heavens rise. The proximal cusp of each house is also the distal cusp of the preceding house, although this secondary factor is of less importance. So we say the proximal cusp of the first house and distal cusp of the 12th, the proximal cusp of the second house and distal cusp of the first, the proximal cusp of the third house and distal cusp of the second, and so on. The size of the houses do vary, but we always represent them in a fixed position as seen here. They are therefore the only things that remain static in astrology, and are the basis for everything that you build hereafter. Every experience Outgoing or incoming fits into one or other of these 12 segments, with man the native, a point of consciousness placed at its center. Beyond the solar system, the heavens, as we know, are filled with stars. Many have been combined by man through the ages to form the constellations. We are interested in a circle of 12 constellations from which the familiar signs of the zodiac derive their names. In the course of a year, the sun, as seen from the earth, passes through all 12. Each sign has its own qualities, often represented by symbols. Thus, we have Aries, the ram; Taurus, the bull; Gemini, the twins; Cancer, the crab; Leo, the lion; Virgo, the maiden; Libra, the scales; Scorpio, the scorpion; Sagittarius, the archer; Capricorn, the goat; Aquarius, the water bearer; and Pisces, the fishes. The signs have associated glyphs which represent them and should be memorized. Each sign, covering 30 degrees of the circle, has an affinity with one of the 12 houses, which we call its natural home, and where we shall place them in our diagram, in a band on the periphery of the circle. The signs are divided into the 4 elements. So we have the fire signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius; the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn; the air signs of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius; and the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. You will learn more about these elements as you progress in the course. Remember that because in astrology the earth, and therefore the houses, are considered static, the zodiacal signs themselves appear to move completely around the chart clockwise in 24 hours, each sign taking 2 hours to rise above the eastern horizon, the cusp of the first house. The sign found in this position at birth is called the ascendant or rising sign, and indicates the soul's purpose. Hence the importance of knowing the exact time of birth. Of course, we must also take into account the planets, which themselves move against the background of the zodiac. Even the sun itself is considered a planet in astrology, due to its movement as seen from the earth. Thus we have, in addition to the sun, Mercury, Vulcan, a planetary energy used in astrology that manifests physically through the asteroids and meteors that inhabit the solar system. Venus, Moon, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The planets also have associated glyphs to represent them, and which also need to be committed to memory. Each planet has a close affinity with one of the signs, and therefore a house, and we shall place them in their natural positions. So we see there is a sympathy existing between a sign and its planet and one of the houses. These three together we call a category. Thus we say, for example, the sign of Aries is happiest and most effective when located in the first house, and it has the most powerful affinity with the planet Mercury, to such an extent that we say Mercury is the ruler of Aries and the lord of the first house. This same language is used for each category and should be learnt by heart. Vulcan is the ruler of Taurus and lord of the second house. Venus is ruler of Gemini and lord of the third house. Neptune is ruler of Cancer and lord of the fourth house. Sun is ruler of Leo and lord of the fifth house. Moon is ruler of Virgo and lord of the sixth house. Uranus is ruler of Libra and lord of the seventh house. Mars is ruler of Scorpio and lord of the eighth house. Earth is ruler of Sagittarius and lord of the ninth house. Saturn is ruler of Capricorn and lord of the 10th house. Jupiter is ruler of Aquarius and lord of the 11th house. Pluto is ruler of Pisces and lord of the 12th house. This way of talking and the use of the glyphs is called astrologies, the language of astrology, and should become a habit to you. Our constructed diagram represents the typical, natural chart or horoscope, showing where these categories are most at home. Each group relates to a specific set of images, symbols, and meanings. These will be covered in detail in the forthcoming series of tapes on the morphology of the signs. But for now, let us look at a few basic meanings for each of our groups. For example, the first house Aries and Mercury category rules beginnings and entrances. In fact, anything that initiates, like the central nervous system. Also, those who make decisions, like generals, ministers, and presidents, and therefore matters of state. The second house covers such things as one's own money, and banks, and the security this provides. Also, roots, and anything underground. Anatomically, it rules the tongue, the lips, and the voice. The third house rules schools and basic education, including language, particularly the written word, literature, and letters. This is also the house of close relatives and anything in pairs, like twins. The fourth is the house of the home and the family, and of those in the home. This is the house of care, nurturing, and sleep, as well as the very young and the very old. The fifth house covers children, sons and daughters, and the sunny things of life, like recreation, holidays, and even love affairs. It also rules anything encircled, for example, flowers. The sixth house rules places where cleanliness is very important, like laboratories and hospitals. This is the house of hard work, of health and illness, and of young unmarried people. The seventh house group rules the law and legal matters. This is also the house of partnerships, like the marriage partner, but also that most important of modern partnerships, the car. It also covers freeways used by the car and bridges. The eighth house covers other people's money, loans and inheritances. This is the house of animals and brute strength, and also of powerful drives like sex and the libido. The ninth house rules higher education, sports, and anything that targets. This is also the house of long journeys and of foreign lands. This includes exploration of space and matters on a global scale. The 10th house rules big business, central business districts, and factories. This is also the house of public places, as well as very high places like mountain ranges. The 11th is the house of friends and social or group activity. Also vessels of all kind, especially ships and boats, and other things that float, like the elegant swan. The 12th house rules institutions like religions, especially Catholicism. This is also the house of crime, punishment, and prisons. Remember that what we have seen is only a tiny fraction of the thousands of images that can be attributed to each of the 12 houses. Every experience a person can have can be located within these categories, either singularly or in combination. Now back to our constructed horoscope. In addition to the diurnal movement of the signs, as we saw earlier, the planets also move independently, though much more slowly and at different rates anti-clockwise through the signs. The Moon is the fastest moving planet, taking a little over 28 days to pass through all the signs. The Sun takes 1 year. Saturn, on the other hand, takes a little over 28 years, and the other outer planets even longer. This constant motion is easier to understand if we consider the position of the Sun at different times of the day. At dawn, around 6 a.m., the Sun, and of course the sign it is in, are rising over the ascendant. As the day progresses, the Sun climbs to the mid-heaven, the position that indicates noon. During the afternoon, the day wanes towards sunset, which is marked by the proximal cusp of the 7th house, the descendant, and corresponds to around 6 p.m. After dark, the Sun proceeds on the other side of the Earth, reaching the nadir at midnight, before once again climbing towards the ascendant to herald a new day. This should indicate to you that the actual place of birth is as important as time for the accurate computing of a horoscope. For example, noon in England with the sun in the mid-heaven would be around midnight for someone in Eastern Australia, and the sun would be placed on the opposite side of the horoscope. Always remember, however, that no matter where a planet or a sign is placed, the empathy between the natural position of the planet, sign, and house are always retained. This is a fundamental rule and basic to any interpretation. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, said, "Whatever is born or done this moment of time has the qualities of this moment of time." The horoscope is in fact a space-time map indicating the qualities of time and space at any given moment. It shows a frozen moment of time in the course of the perpetual motion of the heavens. At birth, for example, as a newborn child takes his first breath of life, he generates a life force independent of the mother for the first time, and is imprinted with the qualities of the heavenly bodies as they existed in that brief moment. The natal horoscope is thus generated and shows the 12 houses in their static positions, the position of the 12 signs. The numbers next to each sign indicate how many degrees the signs have progressed over each house cusp. This is where we also find the ascendant, indicating the soul's purpose for that life. In this case, we see it as the sign of Pisces, which has risen 3 degrees. Also shown are the position within the signs and houses of the 12 planets. The numbers and sign glyphs next to each planet indicates how many degrees the planet has progressed through that sign. Notice in this chart the sun is placed just above the ascendant in the 12th house, indicating a time of birth shortly after dawn. The time of birth in this example was in fact 6:25 a.m. Any combination of a planet, a sign of the zodiac that the planet is located in, and segment of the horoscope both are housed in, is what we call an aspect. So, drawing from this horoscope, we can read off the 12 basic planetary aspects from the first house anti-clockwise around the chart. Mercury in Pisces in the first house. Venus in Pisces in the first house. When the sign on the proximal cusp is different from the planet sign, it is usual to include this as in the next aspect. Mars in Gemini in the third house with Taurus on the cusp. Moon in Cancer in the fifth house. Uranus in Leo in the sixth house. Earth in Virgo in the sixth house, with Leo on the cusp. Pluto in Virgo in the seventh house. Neptune in Scorpio in the eighth house, with Libra on the cusp. Jupiter in Sagittarius in the ninth house, with Scorpio on the cusp. Saturn in Capricorn in the 10th house, with Sagittarius on the cusp. Sun in Pisces in the 12th house with Aquarius on the cusp. Vulcan in Pisces in the 12th house with Aquarius on the cusp. You see now why it is important to learn the glyphs. Looking at the first aspect again, we see that the planet Mercury is in the sign of Pisces, and both are located in the first house. This aspect, drawn from the horoscope, has a meaning to it which pertains to the qualities of Mercury, the sign in which it is found, and to the house that they are located in. A meaning for this aspect is, for example, the gates of a state penitentiary. Remember that Mercury, Aries, and the first house category rules entrances and therefore gates, and also matters of state. And Pisces rules crime, punishments, and institutions, therefore prisons. Yet this is not the simplest of aspects. A simpler aspect would be merely Mercury in Pisces, and the meaning in this instance would also be simpler, for example, the prison governor. But please note, the simpler the aspect, the less specific its meaning. Another example from this chart is Taurus on the cusp of the 3rd house. Also a simple aspect, and meaning, for example, the spoken word. There are thus many simple aspects extracted from a horoscope, the meanings of which can easily be derived by combining elements from the astrological categories involved. It really is as simple as that. All the meanings used here were obtained from the Dictionary of Astrology, which will be used throughout this course for reference and source material. This concludes the first video program on the course. Many of the subjects introduced here will be covered in detail as you progress, but for now it is important that you familiarize yourself with the categories of planet, sign and house and the glyphs used to represent them. In future programs, the astrological elements being discussed will only be shown in their glyph form. Watch this program several times and be sure to read the accompanying literature. You will notice that no mention has been made of how to cast a horoscope. This is because computers can calculate a chart in seconds instead of the hours it used to take, and with far less chance of error. Although the main emphasis of this course will be on interpretation, it is important for you to have a sound understanding of the structure of a horoscope, and we will continue to present this in future programs. For those of you without access to a computer and appropriate software, the college offers a horoscope calculation service to students. Information about this is on the accompanying text. Until our next program, goodbye and good studying.